The great council hall of the alien world was silent. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on one woman standing in the center. Her name was Serena. She was proud, tall and strong, a warrior from a noble family, but today her shoulders carried shame. Her own people had brought her here not as a hero, but as someone to be punished. The high judge raised his long staff and his voice echoed through the chamber. Serena of House Vera, you defied our command. You broke tradition. You fought against the marriage we arranged for you, and you insulted the honor of your clan. For this crime you will face punishment. Gasps filled the hall. Some thought she would be sent to exile. Others whispered about prison. Serena stood firm, her jaw clenched, her heart burning. She was ready for chains, ready for isolation, but the words that followed shocked her more than anything she had expected. You will be given to a human. You will marry him, live under his roof, and obey his ways. That will be your punishment. The silence broke into laughter, whispers, and cruel smiles. To them, this was worse than exile. To be tied to a human, a species her people often called weak, unclean, and lesser. For a proud warrior like Serena, it was humiliation. Her fists tightened. Her voice shook as she spoke. You call this justice? You think to break me with this shame? I would rather die than share my life with a human. But the council did not bend. The judge's staff struck the floor, sealing her fate. The sentences passed. Tomorrow you will be wed. Serena's legs felt heavy as guards led her out of the hall. Each step echoed with disbelief. Her heart pounded with anger. This was not punishment, it was a weapon. They wanted to crush her pride, make her bow in front of everyone, and chain her spirit with silence. That night, Serena sat in her room staring at the stars outside her window. She remembered battles she had fought, victories she had claimed, and the honor of her house. And now, they were taking it all away with a single order. She whispered to herself. A human? Of all things, a human? In her mind, she pictured them as she had seen before. Fragile bodies, clumsy movements, and soft voices. They were creatures of little power, living short lives compared to her people. How could she, a daughter of warriors, be tied to one of them? It felt like chains around her soul. Her hand gripped the edge of the window. For the first time in many years, she felt something close to fear. Not fear of pain, not fear of death, but fear of being trapped, humiliated, and forgotten. The next day came too quickly. The hall was smaller this time, filled only with witnesses chosen by the council. Serena wore the ceremonial cloak, though she hated its weight. She looked at the man standing across from her, a human. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and steady eyes. His clothes were plain, nothing like the robes of her people. His face showed no pride, no mockery. Instead, he stood calmly, hands folded before him. He did not seem pleased, nor did he seem afraid. Serena studied him with cold eyes. So this is my punishment, she thought. A stranger who should bow before me, but instead will be called my husband. The words of union were spoken, though Serena barely listened. Her mind was a storm of anger and humiliation. Each word felt like a knife carving away her freedom. She did not speak to him, not even once. When the ceremony ended, the hall emptied. The council had achieved their goal. Serena, the proud warrior, now bound to a human. As they walked together out of the hall, she kept her distance. Her steps were sharp, her chin high, refusing to show weakness. The human glanced at her only once, his eyes calm, almost gentle. He did not smile. He did not mock. He simply walked beside her in silence. That silence felt heavier than all the laughter she had faced in the council. For Serena, this was the beginning of her greatest trial. A punishment not of chains or exile, but of living with someone she had been taught to despise. And yet, in the back of her mind, a small thought flickered, one she quickly crushed. What if the council was wrong? What if this punishment would not break her, but change her? She pushed the thought away. She would never let a human touch her heart. Never, or so she believed. The journey to the human's house felt longer than any battlefield Serena had ever crossed. She walked beside him in silence, her cloak pulled tight around her shoulders. The world outside the city was quiet. No crowds, no mocking whispers, only the sound of wind moving through the grasslands. She expected him to speak, perhaps to boast, perhaps to mock her for being forced into this punishment. But he said nothing. Not a single word. His calm silence irritated her more than insults ever could. At last they reached his home. It was small. So small that Serena stopped in the doorway, her eyes narrowing. One room, maybe two, wooden walls, a simple roof, the faint smell of burning firewood. No shining crystals, no high ceilings, no servants moving to and fro. It was plain, humble even. "This is where you live?" she asked finally, her voice sharp, filled with disbelief. The human looked at her once, then nodded. "Yes, it's not much, but it is safe. Safe." The word rolled through her mind like an insult. She did not want safe. She wanted her honor back. Inside, the silence grew heavier. The man moved about slowly, placing his pack on a table, stoking the fire in the small hearth. Serena stood near the doorway, refusing to sit. She felt like a stranger locked in a cage. Finally, she spoke again, her tone cutting like steel. "Do not think this is real. I am here because of punishment, not choice. I will not bow to you." The human looked at her carefully. His eyes were steady, not angry, not amused, just steady. "I do not want you to bow," he said softly. "You are free here." Serena froze. She had expected commands, demands, or some display of power. Instead, she found only words she could not understand. Free? How could she be free when chains of humiliation bound her so tightly? That night the fire flickered low. The human prepared a simple meal, bread, stew, and water. He placed a bowl on the table near her without a word. Serena frowned. In her world, meals were grand. Platters of shining silver, endless plates of exotic food, servants waiting at every side. Here it was. Different. Small portions, plain taste, and yet there was something honest about it. Still, she refused to eat at first. She crossed her arms, staring at him. "You think I will eat human food?" He did not argue. He simply ate his own meal quietly, not looking at her, not pushing her. Hours passed, and hunger finally forced her to take a spoonful. The taste was strange, earthy, simple, but warm. It filled her stomach in a way she did not expect. She hated that she did not hate it. The days passed in slow rhythm. The human woke early, worked on the land, repaired his home, and gathered firewood. Serena often watched him from a distance. He did not speak much, only offered short words when needed. What unsettled her most was his behavior. He did not treat her like property nor like a guest. He simply treated her like she was there, beside him. Nothing more, nothing less. When he repaired the leaking roof, he did not ask her to help. When he cooked meals, he always set a portion for her, whether she touched it or not. When she chose to sit alone by the window for hours, he did not disturb her. This quiet respect was harder for her to fight than cruelty would have been. Cruelty she could resist. Mockery she could crush. But this silence, this calm patience, it left her with no weapon. One evening, she finally snapped. "Why?" she demanded, standing in the center of the room. "Why do you not speak? Why do you not command me like they expected you would? Do you not feel victorious that I was thrown to you like this? Say something." The human looked at her, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he answered quietly. "I did not ask for this either. I was told you would come. I only want peace." His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it. Something she had not noticed before. Sadness. A quiet weight. As if he too carried chains she could not see. Serena did not know what to say. For the first time since the punishment began, her anger did not find a target. She sat back down, her eyes on the fire, and the silence stretched between them once more. But that night, as she lay awake on the small bed he had given her, while he himself slept on the floor by the hearth, she found her thoughts turning again and again to that word he had spoken, peace. It was not a word of victory. It was not a word of dominance. It was a word of someone who wanted nothing but quiet days and safe nights. And somehow that troubled her more than chains ever could. The days inside the small human house passed slowly, like drops of water falling into a still pond. Serena's anger had not disappeared, but it had changed shape. No longer fire, it was now heavy stone inside her chest. Every morning the human rose before the sun. He cut wood, fixed tools, and prepared food. Every night he gave her the bed and took the floor for himself. He still barely spoke. That silence gnawed at her. Serena was a warrior, used to battles and shouts, to challenges and victories. But here, there was nothing to fight. No insults, no commands, no cruelty, only patience. She told herself it was weakness. She told herself it was cowardice. Yet when she saw him carrying heavy logs, sweat on his brow, his hands rough and scarred, she felt something she could not name. One evening, The moment came that changed everything. Serena was in the yard, trying to handle one of the strange human tools. It was made for farming, not war, and she had little skill with it. Her people had never touched such simple instruments. She gripped it too tightly, pushed too hard, and the sharp edge slipped. Pain cut across her palm. She hissed, dropping the tool, blood welling up from the wound. For a moment, pride told her to hide it, to wrap it herself, to never show weakness in front of him. But before she could turn, he was already there. The human knelt in front of her, his face calm but his eyes filled with urgency. He gently took her hand. "Let me see." His voice was low, almost careful. Serena stiffened, ready to pull away. But his touch was not rough. It was not commanding. It was soft, gentle, as though her hand was something precious, fragile, something he did not want to break. She stared at him, stunned. No one had ever held her like this. He led her back inside, still holding her hand. He washed the wound with clean water, his movements slow, deliberate. Every time she flinched, he paused, waiting for her to relax. His brow was furrowed, not with anger, but with worry. "You should be careful," he murmured. "Your hand." "It matters," Serena wanted to laugh bitterly. Her hand had held blades, had slain enemies, had defended honor. Yet here was a human, treating a small cut as if it were the end of the world. But she did not laugh. She could not. When he wrapped the cloth around her palm, his fingers brushed against her skin. Warm, steady. Not the touch of a jailer or master. Not the touch of a conqueror. The touch of someone who cared. The moment stretched longer than it should have. Her heart gave a small, unexpected tremor. That night, she sat by the window, staring at the stars. The bandage was tight around her hand, and she could still feel the warmth of his fingers. She told herself it was nothing, only duty, only kindness, the way one would care for an injured animal. But her mind replayed the look in his eyes, the fear, not for himself but for her. For the first time since her punishment began, she did not feel only anger, she felt confusion. The following days carried small changes. When he worked outside, she found herself watching him more closely. The way he repaired the roof so rain would not drip where she slept. The way he placed fresh water near her seat every morning. The way he walked carefully when passing by her, as though respecting invisible walls she had built. Once, she caught herself waiting for him to speak, even though she always complained about his silence. Another time, she realized she was listening for his footsteps in the yard, the steady rhythm that had become strangely comforting. And then one night as she lay awake, she thought of his hands again, how careful they had been with her own. She clenched her fist, angry at herself. "He is only human," she whispered. "This is weakness, nothing more." But the words felt hollow. The breaking point came during a storm. Rain crashed against the roof, wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and the fire flickered low. Serena could not sleep. She paced the room, restless. Then she saw him. He was fixing the shutter, his clothes soaked, his face pale from cold. She expected him to retreat, to save himself. But he stayed at the window, struggling against the storm to keep the house safe. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted over the thunder. He turned, rain dripping down his face, and answered simply, "Because you are inside." The words struck her harder than any blade. When the storm passed, the house stood strong. He was exhausted, shivering but smiling faintly in relief, and Serena for the first time did not know what to feel. Her punishment was supposed to break her. Instead, she was beginning to feel something far more dangerous, trust, and beneath it, something even deeper, though she dared not name it yet. The wound on Serena's hand healed quickly, but the memory of his touch did not. She found herself glancing at the bandage even after it was removed, as if it carried something invisible, something she could not shake away. Her life in the human's home settled into a rhythm. The silence between them remained, but it was no longer heavy in the same way. Before it had felt like chains. Now, it was something different. Like a space where she could breathe without judgment, and slowly she began to notice the small things. One morning, she woke to the smell of fresh bread. The human was already awake, standing by the small fire. He placed a loaf on the table and quietly set a portion aside near her seat. He did not ask if she wanted it. He did not tell her to eat. He simply left it there, as if he knew hunger would bring her eventually. She frowned at first, refusing to touch it. But hours later, when he had gone outside, she tore off a piece. The bread was warm, soft, and surprisingly sweet. When he returned, he did not mention it. He only smiled faintly when he noticed the missing slice. Another day she sat by the window staring at the horizon. She had grown used to the sound of his footsteps in the yard, but that evening he returned with something unexpected. In his hands was a small bunch of wildflowers. He placed them carefully in a jar near her window. Not in front of her, not as a gift handed directly, but quietly, as though it was only for the room itself. Serena raised an eyebrow. "Flowers?" she asked, her voice carrying a trace of mockery. He only shrugged. "I thought the space looked empty." She almost laughed. Flowers were things her people used in ceremonies, in victories, in great halls. They were symbols of honor and celebration. But here, in this small human home, they were just color, and yet she caught herself looking at them more than once. The small gestures continued. When the roof leaked again, he fixed it before rain could touch her bed. When she left her cloak on the chair, he folded it neatly instead of leaving it on the floor. When he saw her practicing with the strange farm tools, he did not interrupt, but he sharpened the blade afterward so it would cut easier next time. Each act was so simple, so quiet, that at first she ignored them. But over time they began to press against her pride in ways she could not fight. One evening, as they ate together, she finally spoke. "Why do you do these things? The food, the flowers, the roof?"
You treat me as if...
She paused, her voice colder than her heart felt, as if I belong here. The human looked at her across the small table. His eyes were calm, the same steady gaze she had seen since the beginning. "You live here now," he said softly. "That is enough." The words struck her more deeply than she expected. They were not possessive. They were not demanding. They were simply acceptance. For a moment, Serena did not know where to place her anger. She wanted to call it weakness, but her heart whispered something else. That night she could not sleep. The flowers by the window swayed gently in the night breeze. She stared at them, thinking of his words. "You live here now. That is enough. Enough for him." But was it enough for her? The next day, the human cut his hand while working with wood. It was a small cut, no more than a scratch. But when Serena saw the blood, something inside her shifted. Without thinking, she reached for his hand just as he had once reached for hers. Her fingers wrapped around his, steady but careful. "Sit," she ordered, her tone still firm but no longer hostile. He looked at her, surprised, but obeyed. She tore a strip of cloth and wrapped it around his hand, her movements clumsy but determined. When she tied the knot, their eyes met. For the first time, Serena saw something more than calmness in him. Gratitude, and in herself, she felt something she had long buried. Connection. In the days that followed, the silence between them changed again. It was no longer the silence of strangers. It was a silence filled with unspoken words, unshared smiles, and small gestures that spoke louder than voices ever could. Serena found herself waiting for those gestures. Waiting for the bread on the table, the folded cloak, the flowers at the window. She told herself it meant nothing. But deep inside she knew this was no longer punishment. It was something else. Something she dared not name. Yet every time she saw his quiet hands moving with care, every time his eyes softened when they met hers, she felt her heart whisper what her mind refused to admit. She was changing. The days slipped into weeks, and Serena could no longer deny the changes inside her. She told herself she was only surviving, nothing more. She told herself she still hated the punishment, still hated being trapped in this small human house. But the truth hid in the quiet moments. The bread on the table, the folded cloak, the flowers by her window. These things had begun to matter more than she wanted. She still refused to admit it aloud. Pride chained her tongue, but her heart was starting to betray her. Then came the night when everything changed. Serena had been restless all day. Her thoughts were heavy, her chest tight. She walked outside into the yard under the pale moonlight, hoping the night air would clear her mind. That was when her body betrayed her. Her legs grew weak. The world blurred. Heat burned through her skin, sharp and sudden. She staggered, her warrior strength crumbling. She had caught a fever. Her people were strong. But even the strongest fell when sickness came uninvited. The human found her leaning against the wooden fence, trembling. Without a word, he caught her before she collapsed. His arms were strong, steady, carrying her inside as if she weighed nothing. Serena wanted to protest, to tell him she did not need his help, but her lips would not form the words. Her pride was lost beneath the fire in her veins. He laid her gently on the bed, his brow furrowed in worry. His hands moved quickly, soaking a cloth in water, pressing it against her burning skin, whispering words too soft for her to fully hear. Through half-closed eyes, she saw his face. His calm had broken. For the first time, he looked afraid. Not of her, not of the sickness, but of losing her. Hours passed in haze. She drifted in and out of sleep, always waking to find him still there. He did not leave her side. Every time her fever spiked, he was ready with the damp cloth. Every time she whispered faintly for water, his hand was already at her lips with the cup. At one point, she tried to speak. Why do you care? His answer was simple, whispered like a prayer. Because I cannot bear to see you suffer. Her chest tightened, not from sickness, but from something else entirely. The fever broke after 2 long nights. Serena woke to find him slumped in a chair beside her bed, asleep, exhaustion heavy on his face. For a long time, she only watched him. This human who was supposed to be her punishment. This human who had stayed awake for days to keep her alive. Her people had called humans weak. They had called them lesser. But in that moment, she saw no weakness. She saw strength of a different kind, the strength to care, the strength to protect, the strength to give without expecting anything in return. And that was the breaking point. Her walls, built of pride and anger, cracked. Later, when he finally stirred awake, she spoke. You should not have done that, she said softly. He blinked at her, still half asleep. Done what? Staying awake, watching me, caring for me like, she hesitated, like I mattered. His eyes met hers, calm once more. You do matter. The words sank into her heart like arrows, simple, honest, impossible to deny. That evening, when he placed food before her, she did not hesitate. She ate without pride blocking her. When he folded her cloak, she did not roll her eyes. Instead, she touched the neat fold with her fingers, quietly thankful. The small gestures had always been there. But after the fever, after his sleepless nights at her side, they were no longer just gestures. They were proof. Proof that she was not his prisoner, not his punishment. She was someone he cared for, and though she still told herself she could not allow it, deep inside she knew. Her heart had already begun to turn toward him. That night, when the fire burned low and he settled onto the floor as always, Serena whispered into the quiet room. Thank you. She thought he was asleep, but his voice came back softly from the shadows. You're welcome. Her chest tightened again. The breaking point had passed. There was no going back. The fever had left Serena weak, but her spirit felt different now. Something fragile had grown inside her. Something she did not yet dare to name. The human's gentle care had carved cracks into the walls of her pride. But peace never lasts. One afternoon, the quiet of the small home shattered. Serena heard the heavy march of boots outside. Shadows fell across the door. Voices, harsh, mocking, filled the yard. She knew those voices. Soldiers of her people. The door burst open. 3 alien warriors stepped inside, their armor gleaming, their faces twisted with cruelty. Well, well, one sneered. Serena of House Vera, the proud warrior living like a pet in a human's cage. The others laughed. Their eyes crawled over the room, the simple table, the flowers by the window. Their voices dripped with poison. Tell us, Serena, another jeered. Has the human tamed you yet? Do you fetch his water? Do you warm his bed? Serena's blood boiled, her fists clenching. She wanted to strike them, but weakness still lingered in her limbs. Before she could speak, the human stepped forward. He placed himself between Serena and the soldiers, his stance steady. She owes you nothing, he said quietly. The laughter grew louder. Look at him, one soldier spat. The human dares to stand like a protector? Move aside, little man, before we crush you. But he did not move. Serena's heart pounded. This was madness. 3 trained warriors against 1 unarmed human. He would be broken in moments. She opened her mouth to command him to step back, but the words caught in her throat, because in his eyes she saw no fear, only determination. I will not let you touch her, he said, voice calm but carrying the weight of steel. The soldiers sneered. One raised his weapon, a blade glowing with cold light. Serena's breath caught. The human did not flinch. In that instant, Serena understood. Her punishment had been meant to break her pride. But what broke instead was the lie her people had always told. Humans were not weak. This one, her human, stood unshaken against those who should have crushed him. And he did it for her. For her. The soldiers advanced. Serena forced herself to her feet, strength fueled not by her body but by something deeper. She grabbed the nearest object, a wooden staff leaning against the wall, and swung with all the power she had left. The blow cracked against one soldier's helmet, sending him stumbling. The human took the chance. He rushed forward, tackling the second soldier before the blade could strike. They crashed to the ground, struggling. The human's fists struck again and again, fueled by sheer will, not training. The third soldier lunged toward Serena, but she met his strike with the staff. Her arms trembled, her fevered body barely holding, but she refused to fall. The fight was chaos. Wood against steel, fists against armor, pride against truth. And through it all, Serena realized something that stole her breath. They were fighting together, not as prisoner and jailer, not as enemies forced into a union, but as two souls standing against the world. At last the soldiers retreated, battered and furious. One spat blood, glaring at Serena. "This is not over. You shame us by standing with him. You will regret this." They staggered out, vanishing into the night. Silence fell. Serena dropped the staff, her arms shaking. The human stood beside her, chest heaving, face bruised but unbroken. For a long moment, they only stared at each other, both breathing hard, both alive against all odds. Finally, Serena spoke, her voice trembling. You could have died." He wiped blood from his lip and gave a small, tired smile. "So could you," her heart twisted. She had been ready for chains, for shame, even for exile. But she had never been ready for this. For someone who would stand against his own death just to protect her. Without thinking, she stepped closer. Her hand, usually so firm and unyielding, touched his bruised cheek. "You are a fool," she whispered. "A brave, impossible fool." His eyes met hers, steady as always. And in that gaze, she finally saw the truth she had denied for so long. This was no punishment. This was salvation. That night, as the fire burned low, Serena lay awake, listening to his breathing. The world outside still hunted them. Her people would not forgive what had happened. But inside this small house, she no longer felt trapped. She felt safe. She felt seen. And though she did not yet speak the word aloud, she knew the seed had already taken root. Love. The house was quiet after the soldiers left, but the silence was no longer the same. It was not the heavy silence of strangers. It was the stillness that comes after a storm, fragile, tender, and full of unspoken truth. Serena sat near the fire, her body sore, her mind restless. She had faced battles before, enemies with sharper blades and stronger armor. Yet tonight something far greater had shaken her. The sight of a human standing before her people, ready to die so she could live. Her heart would not stop repeating the image. His body shielding hers, his fists striking against steel, his voice steady with courage. No one had ever fought for her like that. Not her council, not her clan, not even those who had called themselves her allies. Only him. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost tired. "You should rest. They may come back. You'll need your strength." She looked at him carefully. His face was bruised, his lip cut, his knuckles raw from fighting. And yet his first thought was still of her. For a long time, Serena said nothing. Her pride, her walls, the lies her people had taught her, they all stood between her heart and her voice. But the silence felt like betrayal now. She could not let it last. "I was wrong," she said finally, her voice soft but clear. The human looked at her, surprise flickering in his tired eyes. "Wrong?" Serena's gaze dropped to the flowers still on the windowsill, now bent and bruised from the fight. She reached out, touching one broken petal with gentle fingers. "Yes," she whispered. "I thought this was punishment. I thought you were chains, but you are the only one who gave me back my dignity. You never tried to break me. You never tried to own me. You only cared." Her voice trembled on the last word. The human shifted closer, his movements hesitant, as if he feared breaking the fragile moment. "I didn't want to be your punishment," he admitted. I only wanted peace. But then, his eyes met hers, steady and honest. Then you became more than that, Serena's breath caught. His words were simple, without poetry, but they pierced deeper than any vow she had ever heard. For the first time since her exile, she allowed her guard to fall. She reached for his hand, the same hand that had bandaged her wounds, that had fought against her enemies, that had touched her with gentle strength. Her fingers wrapped around his, and she did not let go. The days that followed were no easier. Her people would not forgive her betrayal. The soldiers would return. Danger still lurked beyond the small home, but for the first time Serena did not feel alone. When she worked beside him in the fields, she felt pride, not shame. When she shared his bread, she felt warmth, not humiliation. When she looked at the flowers by the window, replaced every few days with fresh ones, she felt hope, not emptiness. Each small gesture now carried weight beyond words. And each night, as the fire flickered low, she no longer turned away from him. She sat closer, listening to the quiet rhythm of his breathing, letting her heart beat in time with his. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of red and gold, she stood outside the house with him. The sky stretched wide, endless and open. I used to believe strength meant standing alone, she said softly. But now I see. True strength is standing with someone who will never leave your side. The human smiled, faint and quiet, but filled with warmth. And I used to believe I had nothing to give, he said. But you showed me that even the smallest gestures can change everything. They stood there together.
The alien warrior and the human outcast.
Bound not by punishment anymore, but by choice. That night, Serena whispered the words she had kept hidden too long. I am not your prisoner, she said. I am not your punishment, I am yours. The firelight danced in his eyes as he answered, steady and gentle, and I am yours. From shame had come dignity, from silence had come trust, from punishment had come love. And though the world beyond still waited with danger and judgment inside that small human home, a new bond had been forged, one that no council, no army, and no lie could ever break.